Shalom and welcome to Torah and Coffee. This is the reading of Leviticus starting in chapter 9. Leviticus chapter 9 through chapter 11. The Haftadrah is in 2 Samuel starting at chapter 6 verse 1 through 17. The BeritHadasah is Mark 7, 1 through 23, Acts 5, 1 through 11, Acts 10, 1 through 35, 2 Corinthians 6, 14 through 7, 1, Galatians 2, verse 11 through 16, and 1 Peter 1, 14 through 16. So, sit back, enjoy the Torah reading, and your coffee. We're starting in Leviticus chapter 9. Shemini, if I pronounce it right in Hebrew, which means 8. On the 8th day, Moses called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. He said to Aaron, "Take a calf of the herd of a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering without blemish, and bring them before Yahweh. And speak to the Israelites, saying, Take a he-goat for a sin offering, a calf and a lamb yearlings without blemish for a burnt offering, and an ox and a ram for an offering of well-being, to sacrifice before Yahweh, and a meal offering with oil mixed in. For today Yahweh will appear to you." They brought to the front of the tent of meeting the things that Moshe had commanded, and the whole community came forward and stood before Yahweh. Moshe said, "This is what Yahweh has commanded that you do, that the presence of Yahweh may appear to you." And Moshe said to Aaron, "Come forward to the Mizpah and sacrifice your sin offering and your burnt offering, making expiation for yourself and for the people, and sacrifice the people's offering, and make expiation for them as Yahweh has commanded you." Aaron came forward to the Mizpah and slaughtered his calf of sin offering. Aaron's sons brought the blood to him. He dipped his finger in the blood and put it on the horns of the Mizpah, and he poured out the rest of the blood at the base of the Mizpah. By the way, Mizpah is the altar of sacrifice. The fat, the kidneys, and the protuberance of the liver from the sin offering he turned into smoke on the Mizpah, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe, and the flesh and the skin were consumed in fire outside the camp. Then he slaughtered the burnt offering. Aaron's sons passed the blood to him, and he dashed it against all the sides of the Mizpah. They passed the burnt offering to him in sections, as well as the head, and he turned it into smoke on the Mizpah. He washed the entrails and the legs and turned them into smoke on the Mizpah for the burnt offering. Next he brought forward the people's offering. He took the goat for the people's sin offering and slaughtered it and presented it as a sin offering like the previous one. He brought forward the burnt offering and sacrificed it according to regulations. He then brought forth the meal offering, and, taking a handful of it, he turned it into smoke on the Mizpah, in addition to the burnt offering of the morning. He slaughtered the ox and the ram, the people's sacrifice as well of well-being. Aaron's sons passed the blood to him, which he dashed against every side of the Mizpah, and the fat parts of the ox and the ram, the broad tail, the covering fat, the kidneys, and the protuberance of the liver. They laid these fat pots over the breast, and Aaron turned the fat pots into smoke on the Mizpah, and elevated the breast and the right thigh as an elevation offering before Yahweh, as Moshe had commanded. Aaron lifted his hands toward the people and blessed them, and he stepped down after offering the sin offering, the burnt offering, and the offering of well-being. Moshe and Aaron then went into the tent of meeting. When they came out, they blessed the people, and the presence of Yahweh appeared to all the people. Fire came forth from before Yahweh and consumed the burnt offering and the fat pots on the Mizpah, and all the people saw and shouted and fell on their faces. Chapter 10. Now Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, each took his fire pan, put the fire in it, and laid incense on it, and they offered before Yahweh alien fire which he had not enjoined upon them. And fire came forth from Yahweh and consumed them. Thus they died at the incense of Yahweh. Then Moshe said to Aaron, "This is what Yahweh meant when he said, through those near to me, I show myself holy and gain glory before all the people." And Aaron was silent. Moshe and Michael and Elzaphan, sons of Uzziel, the uncle of Aaron, and said to them, "Come forward and carry your kinsmen away from the front of the sanctuary to a place outside the camp." They came forward and carried them out of the camp by their tunics, as Moshe had ordered. And Moshe said to Aaron and to his sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, "Do not bare your heads, and do not rent your clothes, lest you die, and anger strike the whole community. But your kinsmen, all the house of Israel, shall prevail the burning that Yahweh hath brought. And so do not go outside the entrance of the tent of meeting, lest you die. For Yahweh anointed oil is upon you." And they did as Moshe had bidden. And Yahweh spoke to Aaron, saying, "Drink no wine or other intoxicant, you or your sons, when you enter the tent of meeting, that you may not die. This is a law for all time throughout the ages. For you must distinguish between the sacred and the profane, and between the unclean and the clean. You must teach the Israelites all the laws which Yahweh has imparted to them through Moshe." Moshe spoke to Aaron and to his remaining sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, "Take the meal offering that is left over from Yahweh's offering by fire, and eat it unleavened beside the Mizpah, for it is most holy. You shall eat it in the sacred precinct, inasmuch as it is your due, and that of your children, from Yahweh's offering by fire, for so I have been commanded. But the breast of the elevation offering and the thigh of the offering of the gift offering, you and your sons and your daughters with you may eat in any clean place, for they have been assigned as a due to you and your children from the Israelite sacrifices of well-being. Therefore, with the fat of fire offering, they must present the thigh of gift offering and the breast of elevation offering, which are to be elevated as an elevation offering before Yahweh, and which are to be your due, and that of your children for you for all time, as Yahweh has commanded. Then Moshe inquired about the goat of sin offering, and it had already been burned. He was angry with Eleazar and Itamar, Aaron's remaining sons, and said, "Why did you not eat the sin offering in the sacred area? For it is most holy, and he has given it to you to remove the guilt of the community and to make expiation for them before Yahweh. Since his blood was not brought inside the sanctuary, you should certainly have eaten it in the sanctuary as I commanded." And Aaron spoke to Moshe, "See, this day they brought their sin offering and their burnt offering before Yahweh, and such things have befallen me. Had I eaten sin offering today, would Yahweh have approved?" And when Moshe heard this, he approved. Chapter 11. Yahweh spoke to Moshe and Aaron, saying to them, "I speak to Bnei Yisrael thus, these are the creatures that you may eat from among all the land animals. Any animal that has two hoofs with clefts through the hoofs, and they chew the cud, such you may eat. The following, however, of those that either chew the cud or have two hoofs, you shall not eat: the camel, although it chews the cud, it is not true hoofs, it is unclean for you. The gammon, although it chews the cud, it is not true hoof, it is unclean for you. The hare, although it chews the cud, it has no true hoof, it is unclean for you. And the swine, although it has true hoof, with the hoofs cleft through, it does not chew the cud, it is unclean for you. You shall not eat of their flesh or touch their carcasses. They are unclean for you. These you may eat all that live in water, within anything in the water, whether in the sea or in the stream, that has fins and scales. These you may eat. But anything in the seas or the streams that has no fins and no scales, among all the swarming things of the water, and among all the other living creatures that are in the water, they are an abomination for you. And an abomination for you they shall remain. You shall not eat of their flesh, and you shall abominate their carcasses. Everything in water that has no fins and no scales shall be an abomination for you. The following you shall abominate among the birds. They shall not be eaten. They are an abomination: the eagle, the vulture, and the black vulture, the kite, falcons of every variety, all varieties of raven, the ostrich, the nighthawk, the seagull, hawks of every variety, the little owl, cormorant, and the great owl, the white owl, the pelican, and the buzzard, the stork, heron of every variety, the hoopie, and the bat, all winged swarming things that walk on four shall be an abomination for you. But these you may eat among all the wing-swarming things that walk on fours, all that have above their feet joined the legs to leap with on the ground. Of these you may eat the following: locusts of every variety, all varieties of bald locusts, crickets of every variety, and all varieties of grasshopper, but all other wing-swarming things that have 4 legs shall be an abomination for you. And the following shall make you unclean: whoever touches the carcass of shall be unclean until evening, and whoever carries the carcass of any of them shall wash their clothes and be unclean until evening. Every animal that has 2 hoofs, but without clefts through the hoof, or that does not chew the cud, they are unclean for you. Whoever touches them shall be unclean. And all animals that walk on paws among these that walk on 4s are unclean for you. Whoever touches their carcasses shall be unclean until evening. And anyone who carries their carcasses shall wash his clothes and remain unclean until evening. They are unclean for you. The following shall be unclean for you from among the things that swarm on the earth: the mole, the mouse, and the great lizard of every variety, the gecko, the land crocodile, the lizard, the sand lizard, and the hammerlon. Those are for you, the unclean among all the swarming things. Whoever touches them when they are dead shall be unclean until evening. And anything on which one of them falls when dead shall be unclean, but it be any article of wood or cloth, or a skin or a sack, any such article that can be put to use shall be dipped in water, and it shall remain unclean until evening. Then it shall be clean. And if any of those falls into an earthen vessel, everything inside it shall be unclean, and the vessel itself you shall break. As to any food that may be eaten, it shall become unclean if it came in contact with water. As to any liquid that may be drunk, it shall become unclean, as it is inside any vessel. Everything on which the carcass of any of them falls shall be unclean. An oven or stove shall be smashed. They are unclean, and unclean they shall remain for you. However, a spring or cistern in which water is collected shall be clean, but whoever touches such a carcass in it shall be unclean. If such a carcass falls upon a seed grain that is to be sown, it is clean. But if water is put on the seed, and any part of the carcass falls on it, it shall be unclean for you. Even animal that you may eat has died. Anyone who touches its carcass shall be unclean until evening. Anyone who eats of the carcass shall wash their clothes and remain unclean until evening. And anyone who carries its carcass shall wash its clothes and remain unclean until evening. All the things that swarm upon the earth are an abomination. They shall not be eaten. You shall not eat among all things that swarm upon the earth anything that crawls on its belly, or anything that walks on fours, or anything that has many legs, for they are an abomination. You shall not draw abomination upon yourself through anything that swarms. You shall not make yourselves unclean therewith, and thus become unclean. For I, Yahweh, am your God. You shall sanctify yourselves, and be holy, for I am holy. You shall not make yourself unclean through any swarming thing that moves upon the earth. For I, Yahweh, am he who brought you up from the land of Egypt to be your God. You shall be holy, for I am holy. These are the instruments concerning animals. These are the instructions concerning animals, birds, all living creatures that move in water, and all creatures that swarm on earth, for distinguishing between the clean and the unclean, between the living thing that may be eaten and the living thing that may not be eaten. May Yahweh bless his word. Second Samuel chapter 6 through chapter 7 verse 17. David again assembled all the picked men of Israel, 30,000 strong. Then David and all the troops that were with him set out from Balaam of Yehudah to bring up from there the Aron of Yahweh, to which the name was attached, the name Lord of Hosts, enthroned on the cherubim. They located the Aron of Yahweh onto a new cart and conveyed it from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill, and Abinadab's sons Uzzah and Ahio gathered the new cart. They conveyed it from Abinadab's house on the hill, Uzzah walking alongside the Aron of Yahweh, and Ahio walking in front of the Aron. Meanwhile, David, all the house of Israel, danced before Yahweh to the sound of all kinds of cypress wood instruments, with lyres, harps, timbrels, sistrums, and cymbals. But when they came to the threshing floor of Nachon, Uzzah reached out for the Aron of Yahweh and grabbed it, for the oxen had stumbled. Yahweh was incensed at Uzzah, and Yahweh struck him down on the spot for his indiscretion, and he died there beside the Aron of Yahweh. David was distressed because Yahweh had inflicted a breach upon Uzzah, and that place was named Perez Uzzah. It is as it is still called. David was afraid of Yahweh that day. He said, "How can I let the Aron of Yahweh come to me?" So David would not bring the Aron of Yahweh to his place in the city of David. Instead, David diverted it to the house of Ebed, Edom the Gedite. The Aron of Yahweh remained in the house of Obed Edom the Gedite 3 months, and Yahweh blessed Obed Edom and his whole household. It was reported to King David, "Yahweh has blessed Obed Edom's house and all that belonged to him because of the Aron of Yahweh." Thereupon David went and brought up the Aron of Yahweh from the house of Obed Edom to the city of David amid rejoicing. When the bearer of the aroma of Yahweh had moved forward 6 paces, he sacrificed an ox and a fatling. David ruled with all his might before Yahweh. David was girded with a linen ephod. Thus David and all the house of Israel brought the aroma to Yahweh with shouts and with blasts of the shofar. As the aroma of Yahweh entered the city of David, Michal, daughter of Shaul, looked out of the window and saw King David leaping and whirling before Yahweh, and she despised him for it. They brought in the aroma of Yahweh and set it up in its place inside the tent which David had pitched for it, and David sacrificed burnt offerings and offerings of well-being before Yahweh. When David finished sacrificing the burnt offering and the offering of well-being, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts, and he distributed among all the people, the entire multitude of Israel, man and woman alike, to each a loaf of bread, a cake made in the pan, and a raisin cake. Then all the people left for their homes. David went home to greet his household, and Michal, daughter of Shaul, came out to meet David and said, "Didn't the king of Israel do himself honor today, exposing himself today in the sight of the slave girls of his subjects, as one of the riffraff may expose himself?" David said unto Michal, "It was before Yahweh who chose me instead of your father and all his family, and appointed me ruler over Yahweh's people Israel. I will dance before Yahweh, and dishonor myself even more, and be low in my own esteem. But among the slave girls that you speak of, I will be honored." So, to her dying day, Michal, daughter of Shaul, had no children. Chapter 7. When the king was settled in his palace, and Yahweh had granted him safety from all the enemies around him, the king said to the Navi Nathan, "Here I am, dwelling in the house of cedar, while the aroma of Yahweh abides in a tent." Nathan said to the king, "Go and do whatever you have in mind, for Yahweh is with you." But the same night the word of Yahweh came to Nathan, "Go and say to my servant David, thus said Yahweh, are you the one to build a house for me, or dwell in? From that day that I brought the people of Israel out of Egypt to this day, I have not dwelt in a house, but have moved about in tent and Mishkan. As I moved about wherever the Israelites went, did I ever reproach any of the tribal leaders whom I appointed to care for my people Israel? Why have you not built me a house of cedar? Further, say thus to my servant David, thus said the Lord of hosts, I took you from the pasture, from following the flock, to be a ruler of my people Israel. And I have been with you wherever you went, and have cut down all the enemies before you. Moreover, I will give you great renown. I will make you great renown like that of the greatest men on earth. I will establish a home for my people Israel, and will plant them firm, so that they shall dwell secure and shall tremble no more. Evil men shall not oppress them any more as in the past. Ever since I appointed chieftains over my people Israel, I will give you safety from all your enemies. Yahweh declares to you that He, Yahweh, will establish a house for you. When your days are done and you lie with your fathers, I will raise up your offspring after you, one of your own issues, and I will establish his kingship. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish his royal throne forever. I will be a father to him, and he shall be a son to me. When he does wrong, I will chastise him with the rod of men and the affliction of mortals. But I will never withdraw my favor from him as I withdrew it from Shaul, whom I removed to make room for you. Your house and your kingship shall ever be secure before you. Your throne shall be established forever. Nathan spoke to David in accordance with all these words and all these prophecies. May the word of the Lord be fulfilled. Let's turn to the BeritHadasah, or the New Testament. Mark chapter 7, verses 1 through 23. The Perusian and some of the Torah teachers who had come from Jerusalem gathered together with Yeshua and saw that some of the Talmudim ate with ritual unclean hands, that is, without doing not tilat yadayim. For the Perusian and indeed all the Judeans hold fast to the tradition of the elders, do not eat unless they have given their hand in ceremonial washing. Also, when they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they have cleansed their hands up to the wrist, and they adhere to many other traditions, such as washing cups, pots, and bronze vessels. The Perusian and the Torah teachers asked him, "Why don't you Talmudim live in accordance with the tradition of the elders, but instead eat with ritual unclean hands?" Yeshua answered them, Yahweh was right when he prophesied about the hypocrites, as it is written, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far away from me. Their worship of me is useless because they teach man-made rules as if they were doctrines. You depart from God's command and hold on to human tradition. Indeed, he said to them, you have made a fine art of departing from God's command in order to keep your tradition. For Moshe said, honor your father and your mother, and anyone who curses his father and mother must be put to death. But you say, if someone says to his father or mother, I have promised as a korban, that is a gift to God, what I might have used to help you, then you no longer let him do anything for his father or mother. Thus, with your tradition, which you have handed down to you, you nullify the word of God, and you do other things like this. Then Yeshua called the people to him again and said, listen to me, all of you, and understand this. There is nothing outside a person which, by going into him, can make him unclean. Rather, it is the thing that comes out of the person which makes a person unclean. When he had left the people and entered the house, some of them asked him about the parable. He replied to them, "So you too are without understanding. Don't you see that nothing going into your person from outside can make you unclean? For it doesn't go into your heart, but into your stomach, and it passes out into the latrine." For he declares all foods virtually clean. It is what comes out of a person, he went on, that makes him unclean. For from within, out of the person's heart, comes forth wicked thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, and greed, malice, deceit, indecency, envy, slander, arrogance, foolishness. All these wicked things come from within, and they make a person unclean. Next, Yeshua left that district and went to the vicinity of Zoar and Zidon. There he found a house to stay in and wanted to remain unrecognized, but keeping hidden proved impossible. Instead, a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit in her came to him and fell down at his feet. The woman was a Greek by birth, a Syro-Phoenician, and she begged him to drive the demon out of her daughter. He said, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not right to take the children's food and toss it to the pet dogs." She answered him, "That is true, sir, but even the dogs under the table eat the children's leftover." Then he said to her, "For such an answer you may go on home. The demon has left your daughter." She went back home and found the child lying on the couch, the demon gone. Let's turn over to Acts chapter 5. Acts chapter 5, 1 through 11. Acts chapter 5, starting at verse 1. But there was a man named Hananiah, who, with his wife Shapira, sold some property, and with his wife's knowledge, withheld some of the proceeds for himself. Also, he did bring the rest to the emissaries. Then Keeper said, "Why has the adversary so filled your heart, that you lie to the Ruach HaKodesh and keep back some of the money you received for the land before you sold it? The property was yours, and after you sold it, the money was yours to use as you pleased. So what made you decide to do such a thing? You have lied not to human beings, but to God." On hearing these words, Hananiah fell down dead, and everyone who heard about it was terrified. The young man got up, wrapped his body in a shroud, carried him out, and buried him. Some 3 hours later, his wife came, and unaware of what had happened, Kepha challenged her, "Tell me, is it true that you sold your land for such and such a price?" She answered, "That is what we were paid for it." But Kepha came back at her, "Then why did you people plot to test the Spirit of the Lord? Listen, the men who buried your husband are at the door. They will carry you out too." Instantly she collapsed at his feet and died. The young men entered, found her their dead and carried her out and buried her beside her husband. As a result of this, great fear came over the whole Messianic community and indeed over everyone who heard about it. Chapter 10, 1 through 35. Chapter 10, starting at verse 1. There was a man in Caesarea named Cornelius, a Roman army officer in what was called the Italian regiment. He was a devout man, a God-fearer, as was his whole household. He gave generously to help the Jewish poor and prayed regularly to God. One afternoon around 3 o'clock, he saw clearly in a vision an angel of God coming in and saying to him, Cornelius. Cornelius stared at the angel, terrified. What is it, sir? He asked. Your prayers, replied the angel, and your acts of charity have gone up into God's presence, so that he who has you on his mind. Now, send some man to Joppa to bring back a man named Simeon, also called Keeper. He's staying with Shimon, the Levitian, who has a house by the sea. As the angel had spoken to him went away, Cornelius called 2 of his household slaves and 1 of his military aides, who was a godly man. He explained everything to him and sent them to Joppa. The next day, about noon, while they were still on their way and approaching the city, Kepha went up onto the roof of the house to pray. He began to feel hungry and wanted something to eat. But while they were preparing the meal, he fell into a trance in which he saw heaven open and something that looked like a large sheet being lowered to the ground by its 4 corners. In it were all kinds of 4-footed animals, crawling creatures, and wild birds. Then the voice came to him, Get up, Kepha, slaughter and eat. But Kepha said, No, sir, absolutely not. I have never eaten food that was unclean or terrible. The voice spoke to him a second time, Stop treating as unclean what God has made clean. This happened 3 times, and then the sheet was immediately taken back up into heaven. Kepha was still puzzled over the meaning of the vision he had seen, when the men Cornelius had sent, having inquired of Shimon's house, stood at the gate and called out to ask if the Shimon known as Kepha was staying there. While Kepha's mind was still on the vision, the Spirit said, 3 men are looking for you. Get up, go downstairs, and have no misgiving about going with them, because I myself have sent them. So Kepha went down and said to the men, You were looking for me? Here I am. What brings you here? They answered, Cornelius. He's a Roman army officer, an upright man, and a God-fearer, a man highly regarded by the whole Jewish nation, and he was told by the holy angel to have you come to his house and listen to what you have to say. So Kepha invited them to be his guests. The next day he got up and went with them, accompanied by some of the brothers from Joppa, and he arrived at Caesarea. The day after that, Cornelius was expecting him. He had already called together his relatives and close friends. As Kepha entered the house, Cornelius met him and fell prostrate at his feet. But Kepha pulled him to his feet and said, "Stand up, I myself am just a man." As he talked with him, Kepha went inside and found many people gathered. He said to them, "You are well aware that for a man who is a Jew to have close association with someone who belongs to another people or to come and visit him is something that just isn't done. But God has chosen me not to call any person common or unclean. So when I was summoned, I came without raising any questions. Tell me then, why did you send for me?" Cornelius answered, 3 days ago, around this time, I was in Manasseh prayers in my house, when suddenly a man shining clothes stood in front of me. He said, God has heard your prayers and remembered your acts of charity. Now send to Joppa and ask for Shimon, known as Kepha. He is staying in the house of Shimon, a Levitana by the sea. So I sent for you immediately, and you have been kind enough to come. Now all of us are here in the presence of God to hear everything that the Lord has ordered you to say. Then Kepha addressed them, "I now understand that God does not play favorites, but that whoever fears him and does what is right is acceptable to him, no matter what people he belongs to." Thank you, Lord. Second Corinthians chapter 6. It calls for chapter 14, but let's start reading at verse 11. Dear friends in Corinth, we have spoken frankly to you. We have opened our hearts wide. Any constraint you feel has not been imposed by us, but by your own inner selves. So to be fair, I'm using language of children. Open wide your hearts too. Verse 14. Do not yoke yourself together in a team with unbelievers, for how can righteousness and lawlessness be partners? What fellowship does light have with darkness? What harmony can there be between the Messiah and Belial? What does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? What agreement can there be between the temple of God and idols? For we are the temple of the living God. As God said, I will house myself in them, and I will walk among them. I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore, Adonai says, go out from their midst, separate yourselves. Don't even touch what is unclean. Then I myself will receive you. In fact, I will be your father, and you will be my sons and daughters, said Adonai Tzebaoth. Chapter 7, verse 1. Therefore, my dear friends, since I have these promises, let us purify ourselves from everything that can defile either body or spirit, and strive to be completely holy out of reverence of God. Let's turn to Galatians chapter 2, 11 through 16. Galatians chapter 2, starting at verse 11. Furthermore, when Kepha came to Antioch, I opposed him publicly because he was clearly in the wrong. For prior to the arrival of certain people from the community headed by Yaakov, he had been eating with the Gentile believers. But when they came, he withdrew and separated himself because he was afraid of the faction who favored circumcision, Gentile believers, and the other Jewish believers became hypocrites along with him, so that when Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy, but when I saw that they were not walking in a straight path, keeping in line with the truth of the good news, I said to Kepha, right in front of everyone, if you, who are a Jew, live like a Gentile and not like a Jew, why are you forcing the Gentiles to live like Jews? Why are Jews by birthright not so-called Gentile sinners? Even so, we have come to realize that a person is not declared righteous by God on the grounds of his legalistic observance of Torah commands, but through the Messiah Yeshua, trusting faithfully. Therefore, we too have put our trust in Messiah Yeshua and become faithful to him, in order that we might be declared righteous on the ground of the Messiah's trusting faithfulness, and not on the ground of our legalistic observance of Torah commands. For on the ground of legalistic observance of Torah commands, no one will be declared righteous. Thank you, Lord. 1 Peter 1, 14 through 16. 1 Peter 1, 14 through 16. Well, I'll start at verse 13 and read to verse 16. Therefore, get your minds ready to work. Keep yourselves under control and fix your hopes fully on the gift you will receive when Yeshua the Messiah is revealed. Verse 14. As people who obey God, do not let yourself be shaped by the evil desires you used to have when you were still ignorant. On the contrary, following the Holy One who called you, become holy yourselves in your entire way of life. Santa Tanakh says, you are to be holy because I am holy. Thank you, Father. We give you praise, glory, and honor. May this word richly bless you and keep you. May his light shine upon you and give you peace. Amen.